generation to generation, also in written version. The text Recommendation of Martyrdom, confiscated in Nagasaki in the 1790s, is reminiscent of the instruction by Father Gomes. Its anonymous author or authors state, and I quote, that the holy blood of the martyrs is like seeds for the Kirishitan community. Kirishitan share the Japanese Buddhists and the adepts of Confucius and profound venerations for their ancestors. In the beginning, the Jesuits, and as you know, they were the sole missionaries on the Japanese shore until 1593, when the Franciscans were authorized to join the mission, permitted the continuation of such practices. I argue that the Jesuits may have recognized that this belief was based on the premise that the spirit survives the body after death. The belief in life after death is further central to Christianity. The relevance of the ancestors cult among the Kakure Kirishitans reveal best the deepness of the appropriation of Japan ancestral forms of religion. One main reason for many Kirishitans not to adhere to Roman Catholicism was precisely their loyalty to their ancestors, in particular to those who suffered martyrdom for faith. Albeit the ferocity of the persecutions and campaigns of destruction, the resilience of Kakure Kirishitans reflect in their entrenched cult of the martyrs' graves. Such holy places would be often marked by a simple tree or gozenzama, hanging scrolls or banners depicted with martyrs. Their ritual includes at least a yearly visit to the martyrs' graves, and they are favorite shrines of pilgrimage in times of upheaval. For the Kirishitans, their ancestors' martyrs, as moral favorite models of emulation, formed a special community of kami, or the so-called Mwembotoka, Buddhas of no affiliation or wandering spirits. As victims of violent death, the Mwembotoka remained possessed by a holy passion in which they died. Accordingly, also non-Christian would fear and pay homage to them. The Japanese events illustrate best the culture of martyrdom characterizing Christian circles during the 16th and 17th century. Mention must be made to the wars of religion opposing Protestants and Catholics in Europe. Beyond Europe, the missionary obligation to spread Christianity was often rewarded also with a crown of martyrdom. Both the Franciscans and the Jesuits printed the episode of 1597 immediately after the news of this, and I quote, glorious event reached Europe. Alongside publications, Catholic parties would extensively use copperplate engravings and oil painting, which existed in original and copied form, as a means through which to educate Europeans and non-Europeans with the heroic values represented by martyrs. In particular, the Jesuits, whom may be credited with the largest numbers of martyrs along their ranks, were especially ingenious in that regard. See, for instance, the galleries. This is one of the first such galleries. See, for instance, the galleries of martyrs, which were exclusive to them and which were extremely popular in the German and Flemish European areas, which were deeply marked by the confessional wars. In 1627, the martyrs of Nagasaki, the ones of 1597, were declared blessed. In 1867, Pius IX raised the impressive number of 204 Japanese martyrs to the glory of the altars. The artistic representation of the Japanese martyrdoms spread as far as to America in form of paintings filling the corridors of the Society's College in Amazonia. The Mexican Franciscan missionary Felipe de Jesus was one of the martyrs of Nagasaki in 1597. He is accordingly the first Mexican saint and patron saint of the capital, Mexico City. This martyrdom father enjoyed, and here is Cuernavaca, cathedral. Father enjoyed a prolific visual representation, as in the South American cities such as Quito and Lima. The focus on literary and visual propaganda of such deeds explains that in college and novitiates would not only pay homage for those heroes as to full new missionary vocations. Certainly, the work Societas Jesu ad Sanguinis et Vita Professiones Militans 1675 by the Bohemian Jesuit Matthias Turner is one of the, or maybe the most important work on the subject, on Jesuit martyrdom. It reads that, or from it I infer that the Jesuits in Japan were submitted to a especially ferocious way of torture and martyrdom. Turner's work refers to the unprecedented number of Jesuit martyrs in the history of the Catholic order and an incredible variety of torture and martyrdom practices. Some forms of tortures or martyrdom, such as the so-called pit, which this one, or being immersed in frozen water, were exclusive to this geographical area, according to Tanner. On the 13 May 2013, maybe as a task inherited from Pope Benedictus XVI, Pope Francis canonized more than 800 martyrs, the so-called martyrs of Otranto, which had been killed on a hill outside the southeast Italian town by Ottoman Turk invaders in 1480. This was the first canonization of his pontificate and the largest of the recent years of Vatican history. On October 15, 2017, Pope Francis declared 35 new saints, of which 30 were martyrs slain in Brazil during the 17th century by Dutch Calvinists and indigenous people. In 1645, 3 young boys that had been killed in 16th century Mexico and an Italian priest. The experience of martyrdom for faith remains a present-day reality. As the Japanese early modern martyrdom episodes in Japan, today, martyrdom is part of a global experience. Moreover, as in Japan, in the 21st century, martyrs are often lay people, as they are more vulnerable than priests and archbishops. Or to quote Pope Francis, they aren't Santini, but men and women in flesh and blood, who, as the book of Revelation says, have washed their garments, making them white in the blood of the Lamb. In July 2017, Pope Francis undertook a real revolution as concerns the canonic definition of sainthood. To the traditional categories suffering martyrdom, virtuous life and strong devotion, he added the new category Maiorem hac dilectionem, which is taken from this passage, from a passage in the Gospel of John. Greater love than this no man has, than a man laid down his life for the friends. People who offer their lives for others, mothers who suspend treatments so that their babies can be born, all fall in this new category. Pope Francis indeed gives great attention to the martyrs of the 20th and of the 21st centuries and gives new meanings to the concept of martyrdom. He stated that contemporary heathen martyrs are those people who just listen to the voice of God and attempt to help their communities to love God. The significance assumed by martyrdom for Pope Francis further applies to his long-lasting combat against wealth and inequality. It is particularly illustrative of this concern that Francis declared Oscar Luis Romero blessed in 2015 and canonized him in 2008. And to conclude, events of martyrdom that occurred on the Japanese islands between the late 16th and the middle of the 17th centuries form a very interesting case study within the subject of martyrdom. The emergence of the Catholic initiatants was collective identity is much impacted by these martyrdoms, and the call to these people who face death for their faith is certainly unique. However, these events were part of a time much determined by religious wars and upheaval, ending often in martyrdom. Pope Francis' pontificate proposes contemplatio of martyrium in missio. Under his pontificate, new forms of martyrdom, such as to give the life for our friends or to be a victim of environmental issues, the so-called Laudato Si, are defined. Thank you very much for your attention.